A college trip to Yellowstone spirals into pure chaos when a daring student and his irresistible professor cross a line in a steamy, forbidden moment. Sparks fly, but when they're caught, the group erupts. Friends turn on friends, whispers turn to shouts, and careers hang by a thread. Will they defy the rules and run away together? Or will this sizzling secret destroy them both? Hacked with drama, betrayal, and heart-pounding risks, this jaw-dropping story will keep you glued to every twist. Click now to dive into the hottest mess of the summer. You won't believe the fallout. The bus rattled along the winding road to Yellowstone, the hum of tires against asphalt blending with the chatter of my college group. I was 20, a junior, and already drowning in the weight of questions I wasn't ready to answer. My name's Alex, and I'd spent most of my life dodging the truth about myself, about the way my heart raced when I caught a guy's smile, the way I lingered too long on certain faces in the crowd. San Francisco had taught me it was okay to be me, with its rainbow flags and open hearts, but I wasn't there yet. I was still hiding, and this trip was supposed to be a break from that storm inside me. The group was a mix of familiar faces and strangers, all buzzing with excitement for the week ahead. Yellowstone National Park was the kind of place people posted about on Instagram, geysers, hot springs, and endless skies, but I wasn't here for the views. I needed to escape, to breathe, to figure out who I was before college swallowed me whole. My best friend Lisa was sprawled across the seat next to me, scrolling through her phone, humming along to a Charlie XCX song. You ready for this, Alex? She asked, nudging me with her elbow. Ready to not think for a week, I said, forcing a grin. My backpack was stuffed under my seat, filled with the essentials: clothes, a journal I hadn't touched in months, and a knot of nerves I couldn't unpack. Then I saw him, Ethan, our professor leading the trip. He was 38, with a presence that filled the bus without trying. Dark hair flecked with gray at the temples, a jawline sharp enough to cut through my thoughts, and eyes that seemed to see more than they should. He stood at the front, going over the itinerary with a voice that was low and warm, like a song you wanted to keep on repeat. I'd had him for environmental science class last semester, and even then, I noticed how he made every lecture feel personal, like he was talking just to you. But now, watching him laugh with a student about some trail mix joke, I felt a tug in my chest, something I wasn't ready to name. The first night in Yellowstone was chaos in the best way. We set up camp near a clearing, the air sharp with pine and campfire smoke. The group sprawled around the fire, roasting marshmallows and passing around a Bluetooth speaker, blaring Troye Sivan. I sat on a log, poking at the flames with a stick, trying to blend into the background. Lisa was next to me, telling some story about a disastrous date, but my eyes kept drifting to Ethan. He was across the fire, leaning back on his hands, his flannel rolled up to his elbows, showing forearms tan from summer's outdoors. He caught me looking, and his lips curved into a smile. Not the kind you give a student, but something softer, something that made my stomach flip. You good, Alex? He called over the crackle of the fire, his voice cutting through the noise like it was meant just for me. I froze, my face heating up despite the cool night air. It just chilling, I said, my voice betraying the nerves crawling under my skin. Lisa shot me a curious look, but I ignored it, focusing on the stick in my hand like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Ethan stood, brushing dirt off his jeans, and walked over, his boots crunching against the ground. He dropped onto the log next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his shoulder near mine. First time in Yellowstone? He asked, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp, like he was searching for something. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. It's intense. He chuckled, a low sound that sent a shiver down my spine. Wait till you see the geysers tomorrow. They'll blow your mind. His hand brushed my shoulder as he gestured toward the sky, a quick touch that felt like a spark against my skin. You seem like you've got a lot on your mind, though. Want to talk? I swallowed, my heart pounding. The firelight danced across his face, making his eyes look deeper, like they could pull me in and drown me. Just figuring stuff out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You know, college stuff. He nodded, his gaze steady, like he saw right through my vague answer. I get it. I was your age once, trying to sort out who I was. Took me a while to stop running from it. His words hit like a punch, too close to the truth I wasn't ready to face. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. If you ever need to talk, Alex, I'm here. No yayment. My breath caught, and I nodded, unable to find words. The air between us felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. Lisa's laugh snapped me back to reality, and I realized the group was watching us. Not suspiciously, but enough to make my skin prickle. Ethan stood, clapping me on the shoulder again, his fingers lingering just a second too long. "Help me with the tents later?" he asked, his smile easy but his eyes intense. "Sure," I said, my voice shaky. He walked back to the fire, joining the others, but I felt his presence like a weight, like gravity pulling me towards something I couldn't outrun. I spent the rest of the night replaying that moment, his touch, his words, the way his eyes seemed to know me better than I knew myself. Growing up in San Francisco, I'd seen freedom everywhere. Couples kissing at Pride, friends coming out with confidence I envied. But me? I was still stuck, afraid to admit I wanted someone like Ethan. He was my professor, older, untouchable, and yet that touch on my shoulder felt like a promise of something more. As the fire died down and the group started heading to their tents, Ethan caught my eye again. "You coming, Alex?" he asked, nodding toward the pile of tent gear. His voice was casual, but there was an edge to it, a question that wasn't just about tents. My heart raced, a mix of fear and excitement twisting in my chest. "Yeah," I said, standing, brushing dirt off my jeans. "Let's do it." As we walked toward the gear, the campfire fading behind us, I felt like I was stepping into something bigger than myself, something that could change everything. The Yellowstone sun beat down on us as our group trekked through a trail lined with towering pines, the air thick with the scent of earth and adventure. My sneakers crunched against the dirt, but my mind was miles away, tangled up in the memory of Ethan's hand on my shoulder last night, the way his voice had felt like a secret meant just for me. I was 20, supposed to be figuring out my life, but all I could think about was him, my professor, 38, with a smile that could unravel me and eyes that saw too much. Lisa trudged beside me, her ponytail bouncing as she rambled about the hot springs we'd see later. "You're quiet today, Alex," she said, nudging me with her elbow. Still recovering from the campfire vibes? I forced a laugh, adjusting my backpack to hide the flush creeping up my neck. "Just tired. Long day yesterday." She raised an eyebrow, but let it go, distracted by a squirrel darting across the path. I was grateful for the reprieve. My head was a mess, replaying Ethan's words. No judgment. He'd said it so easily, like he knew the weight I was carrying, the truth I'd buried under years of excuses. Growing up in San Francisco, I'd watched friends embrace who they were, guys holding hands in the mission, drag queens owning the stage of Pride, but I was still hiding, afraid of what it meant to want someone like Ethan. He was ahead of the group, leading the way with that effortless confidence that made my chest tighten. His flannel hugged his shoulders, sleeves rolled up, and every time he turned to check on us, his eyes found mine, lingering just long enough to make my pulse race. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination running wild, but then he called out, "Alex, you back there?" "Yeah," I shouted back, my voice steadier than I felt. A few students glanced at me, and I focused on the trail, pretending the dirt was fascinating. We stopped for a break near a rushing river, the water glinting under the midday sun. The group sprawled out, digging into snacks and water bottles. I found a flat rock to sit on, pulling my knees up, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. Ethan was nearby, handing out maps, his laugh carrying over the group's chatter. Then he was walking toward me, a water bottle in hand, his stride purposeful. "Stay hydrated," he said, tossing me the bottle. I caught it, our fingers brushing for a split second. The contact sent a jolt through me, like a spark I couldn't ignore. His eyes held mine, a flicker of something, amusement, curiosity, before he sat next to me, close enough that I could smell the faint cedar of his cologne. "You're keeping up," he said, his voice low, teasing. "Thought city kids might struggle out here." I snorted, twisting the bottle cap. "I'm tougher than I look." He grinned, leaning back on his hands, his arm brushing mine. "I believe it." His tone was light, but his gaze was heavy, like he was peeling back every layer I'd built to keep myself safe. "You seem distracted, though. Everything okay?" My throat tightened. He was doing it again. Seeing me, really seeing me, in a way that made me want to spill everything. "Just adjusting," I said, my voice quieter now. "This place, it's a lot." He nodded, his eyes softening. "It is, but it's also a place to figure things out. I did back when I was your age." He paused, his fingers tapping the rock, inches from mine. "Took me years to stop fighting who I was. to admit I wanted what I wanted. My breath hitched. He wasn't just talking about nature or college. He was talking about himself, about being queer, about the kind of truth I've been dodging my whole life. I wanted to ask him how he did it, how he found the courage, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I stared at the river, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Alex," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine again. "Deliberate this time. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just don't run from it." I swallowed, my skin buzzing where we touched. Before I could respond, Lisa's voice cut through. "Yo, Alex, you hogging the water or what?" She was grinning, oblivious to the tension, but her interruption snapped me back to reality. Ethan stood, brushing off his jeans. "Better get moving," he said, but his eyes lingered on me, a silent promise that this wasn't over. As he walked back to the group, I felt like I was drowning in the weight of what he'd said, what he'd meant. The rest of the day was a blur of trails and group tasks. Ethan paired me with him to set up markers for a scavenger hunt, and every moment felt charged. His hand grazed mine as we passed the rope, his fingers steadying me when I stumbled over a root. Each touch was small, fleeting, but it set my nerves on fire. I caught myself watching him, how his hands moved, how his laugh lit up the group, and hated how much I wanted to be closer. That evening, back at camp, the group was buzzing, planning a night hike to see the stars. I was sitting on a log, pretending to listen to Lisa's story about some TikTok trend when Ethan approached, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. "Alex, got a sec?" he asked, his voice casual but his eyes intense. "Need your input on tomorrow's route." I nodded, my heart racing as I followed him to a quiet corner of the camp, away from the group's noise. He spread out a map on a picnic table, his fingers tracing the trails, but his gaze kept flicking to me. "You're good at this," he said, his voice low. "Reading maps, keeping up. You're surprising." My face burned. "Thanks," I mumbled, leaning over the map, our shoulders brushing. His hand moved to adjust the map, his fingers grazing my wrist, lingering just long enough to make my breath catch. I froze, caught between wanting to pull away and wanting to lean closer. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost intimate. "You've been quiet all day." "I'm fine," I lied, my voice shaky. His touch was still there, a faint pressure against my wrist, and I couldn't think straight. Just a lot on my mind. He nodded, his eyes searching mine. "I meant what I said earlier. If you need to talk, I'm here." His thumb brushed my wrist, a deliberate move that sent a shiver through me. "Or, if you want to walk tonight, see the stars. No pressure." My heart was pounding, my thoughts a jumbled mess. He was my professor, my guide, someone I shouldn't be feeling this for. But the way he looked at me, the way his touch lingered, it was real, and it was terrifying. "Maybe," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'll think about it." He smiled, small and knowing, and let go my wrist, stepping back. "Good. Find me later." He walked back to the group, leaving me standing there, the map forgotten, my skin still tingling where he'd touched me. I sat back down next to Lisa, my mind racing. I'd spent years avoiding this, avoiding myself. I'd watched friends at Pride, their hands intertwined, their laughter free, and wanted that for myself but never dared. Now, with Ethan, it felt like the walls I'd built were crumbling, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was on the other side. The Yellowstone night was alive with the hum of crickets and the distant gurgle of a geyser. The air cool against my skin as our group set out for the night hike. My sneakers sank into the soft earth, each step heavier than the last, my mind still reeling from Ethan's touch earlier. The way his thumb had grazed my wrist, deliberate, electric. I was 20, stuck in a tug of war between who I was and who I wanted to be, and Ethan was pulling me towards something I couldn't name. Lisa was beside me, chatting about constellations, but I barely heard her. My eyes kept finding Ethan at the front of the group, his flashlight cutting through the dark, his voice steady as he pointed out the trail. "Stay close, everyone," he called, his tone professional but warm, like he was speaking to me alone. I shoved my hands in my pockets, trying to shake the memory of his fingers, the way his gaze had pinned me in place of the campfire. I'd spent years dodging this feeling. Crushes on guys in high school, stolen glances at Pride events in San Francisco. But Ethan was different. He was my professor, 38, untouchable, and yet every look, every touch felt like a step towards something inevitable. The group spread out as the trail widened, students laughing and snapping photos of the starry sky. I hummed back, my heart pounding, torn between joining Lisa and staying close to Ethan. He slowed his pace, falling in step beside me, his flashlight dimmed. "You're quiet tonight," he said, his voice low, just for me. "Thought you'd be all over this stargazing thing." I shrugged, my throat tight, just taking it in. My voice sounded unsteady, and I cursed myself for it. His shoulder brushed mine as we walked, a fleeting contact that sent heat racing through me. "You sure that's all?" he asked, his tone gentle but probing. He stopped, turning to face me, the group's chatter fading into the background. The moonlight caught his face, sharpening the lines of his jaw, making his eyes look like they held every secret I was afraid to tell. "Alex, if something's up, you can tell me." My chest tightened, his words slicing through the walls I'd built. I wanted to tell him about the fear, the longing, the way I'd watched couples at Pride and ache for that freedom. But I couldn't. "Not yet. I'm fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just a lot to think about." He nodded, his gaze steady, like he could see the storm inside me. "Serious." He stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm, a touch so light it could have been an accident, but wasn't. "If you change your mind, I'm here." The group was getting ahead, their flashlights bobbing in the distance. Ethan started walking again, but his pace was slow, like he was waiting for me to catch up. I followed, my heart hammering, every step pulling me closer to something I wasn't sure I could handle. When we reached a clearing near a steaming geyser, the group spread out, some sitting on rocks, others pointing at the sky. Lisa waved me over, but I shook my head, muttering something about needing air. Ethan was by the geyser, checking the trail map, his silhouette sharp against the steam. I walked toward him, my pulse racing, my mind screaming at me to turn back. "Need help?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted. He looked up, his smile small but warm. "Sure," he said, handing me the map. Our fingers brushed, and I froze, the air between us crackling. He didn't pull away, his eyes locking onto mine, and for a moment, the world shrank to just us, the geyser's hum, the stars above, the heat of his gaze. "Alex," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, "I need to be honest with you." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath. "I feel something for you, more than I should. I'm trying to keep this professional, but it's hard when you look at me like that." My heart stopped, then slammed against my ribs. He felt it too, the pull, the spark. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, I leaned in, my lips brushing his in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative, but then deeper, hungrier. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, our breaths mingling in the cool night air. The moment stretched, our bodies pressed together, hands tangled in a way that felt like more than a kiss, like a promise, a release of everything I'd been holding back. Time slowed, the warmth of his touch grounding me, pulling me into a space where nothing else mattered. We pulled apart, my breath ragged, my mind spinning. Ethan's eyes were dark, intense, but his smile was soft. "We need to be careful," he whispered, his fingers still lingering on my hip. "But I don't regret that." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The weight of what we'd done, what we'd felt, hit me like a wave. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a door swinging open when I wasn't sure I could close. "Me neither," I managed, my voice barely audible. A rustle in the bushes snapped us back to reality. Sophie, a quiet girl from our group, stood frozen, her flashlight shaking in her hand. I forgot my jacket," she stammered, her eyes wide, darting between us. My stomach dropped, panic flooding me. She'd seen us. Not just the kiss, but the way we'd been tangled together, the intimacy impossible to mistake. "Sophie, wait," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm, stepping toward her. She shook her head, backing away, then turned and hurried back to the group, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly. "Shit," I whispered, my hands trembling. She saw us. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he reached for my hand, squeezing it briefly. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his eyes. "Just stay with me, okay?" I nodded, my heart racing, torn between the euphoria of what we'd shared and the dread of what came next. Sophie's footsteps faded, but I could already hear the whispers starting, the group's chatter shifting as she reached them. I thought of San Francisco, of the freedom I'd seen but never claimed, and wondered if I'd just ruined everything, or if this was the first step towards something real. The morning after the geyser, Yellowstone felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. The group was quieter at breakfast, the usual chatter replaced by stolen glances and hushed whispers. I sat on a camp chair, picking at a plate of scrambled eggs, my stomach churning. Sophie's wide-eyed stare from last night was burned into my mind. The way she'd seen me and Ethan, our hands tangled, our bodies too close for it to be anything but what it was. My heart hadn't stopped racing since, caught between the thrill of Ethan's touch and the dread of what was coming. I was 20, still figuring out who I was, and last night had cracked something open inside me. Growing up in San Francisco, I'd seen freedom in every pride flag, every couple kissing in the Castro without fear. But me? I was still hiding, and now my secret wasn't just mine, it was ours, and it was spreading like wildfire. Ethan was across the campsite, talking to another professor, his face calm, but his shoulders tense. He caught my eye, a quick glance that sent a jolt through me, like a silent promise that we were in this together. Lisa plopped down next to me, her coffee mug steaming. "Okay, Alex, spill," she said, her voice low but sharp. "What's with you? You've been weird since the hike." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Just tired," I mumbled, avoiding her eyes. She wasn't buying it. I could tell from the way she tilted her head, her gaze boring into me. "Bullshit," she said, leaning closer. "Sophie's been whispering to half the group, and people are acting like you murdered someone. What happened out there?" My throat tightened, panic clawing at me. I wanted to tell her, to let it all pour out. The way Ethan's lips had felt, the way his hands had grounded me in a moment that felt more real than anything I'd ever known. But the words stuck, heavy with fear. "Nothing," I said, my voice barely audible. "Just a misunderstanding." Lisa raised an eyebrow, but before she could push, the shadow fell over us. Professor Nguyen, the trip's co-leader, stood there, her expression unreadable. "Alex, can we talk?" she asked, her tone clipped. My stomach dropped. I nodded, sitting my plate down, my hands shaking as I followed her to a quiet corner of the camp. She didn't waste time. "There's been talk," she said, crossing her arms. "About you and Ethan. Sophie saw something last night, and it's raising questions. Care to explain?" My heart pounded, my mind scrambling for a lie, but nothing came. It's not what you think," I stammered, my face burning. But it was exactly what she thought, and the truth was written all over me. The kiss, the way we'd held each other, the warmth that had lingered long after we'd pulled apart. Wynn's eyes narrowed. "This is serious, Alex. Ethan's your professor. There are rules, boundaries. If something inappropriate happened, there will be consequences for both of you." I swallowed, my chest tight. I'm sorry," I said, the words tasting like ash. I wasn't sorry for what happened with Ethan. Not really, but I was sorry for the mess, for the way it could ruin him. He'd worked years for his career, and I'd lit a match that could burn it all down. She sighed, softening slightly. "We're talking to Ethan now. Stay out of trouble until we sort this out." She walked away, leaving me standing there, my hands clenched, my thoughts spiraling. I glanced across the camp, where Ethan was now with Nguyen and another professor, his face calm, but his eyes flicking to me, a silent reassurance that didn't ease the knot in my gut. The day dragged on, the group's energy fractured. Some students avoided me, their whispers cutting like knives. Others, like Lisa, stayed close, her presence a quiet anchor. During a group task, mapping a new trail, I ended up near Ethan, our hands brushing as we passed the compass. The contact was brief, but it set my skin on fire, a reminder of last night's warmth. He leaned in, his voice a whisper meant only for me. "I don't regret it, Alex," he said, his fingers squeezing mine for a heartbeat before letting go. "Whatever happens, I'm not sorry." My breath caught, his words a lifeline in the chaos. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice trembling. "This could ruin everything." He nodded, his eyes steady. "Maybe, but it's real, and that's worth something." His hand brushed my arm again, a deliberate touch that sent a shiver through me, grounding me even as the world felt like it was crumbling. Lisa caught up with me later, during a break by the river. The group was scattered, some taking photos, others splashing in the shallow water. She pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. "Okay, enough," she said, her voice firm but kind. "I know something's up with you and Ethan, and I'm not judging, Alex, but you need to talk to me." I hesitated, my heart pounding. Then it spilled out, the kiss, the way Ethan's hands had felt, the way I'd felt alive for the first time in years. I didn't mention the deeper moment, the way our bodies had pressed together, but she read it in my face, her eyes widening. "Holy shit," she whispered, then grinned. "You're in deep, huh?" I nodded, my throat tight. "I don't know what to do, Lisa. This could screw everything up for him for me." She squeezed my shoulder, her touch steady. "You're allowed to feel this, Alex. You're allowed to want him. Just be careful, and don't hide from it. You're stronger than you think." Her words hit hard, echoing the freedom I'd seen in San Francisco. People living their truth, no matter the cost. I wanted that, but the fear was still there, clawing at me. What if Ethan lost his job? What if the group turned on us? What if this was a mistake? That night, the camp was tense, the whispers louder. Ethan found me as I was heading to my tent, his hand catching mine in the shadows. "Meet me later," he whispered, his voice low, urgent. "By the river, after lights out. We need to talk." I nodded, my pulse racing, his touch lingering on my skin like a brand. "Okay," I said, my voice shaky but certain. As he walked away, his silhouette blending into the dark, I felt the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about facing the truth, no matter what it cost. The campfire's glow had faded, leaving the Yellowstone camp shrouded in darkness. The only light coming from the stars and the faint shimmer of the river nearby. My heart was a drumbeat in my chest, each thud echoing the chaos of the past day. The whispers about me and Ethan had turned into a storm, and by morning, the fallout was undeniable. Professor Nguyen had pulled Ethan aside again, her voice sharp as she laid out the consequences. He was being sent back to the university, temporarily suspended pending a review. The words that hit me like a punch, guilt twisting in my gut. This was my fault. My kiss, my weakness, my inability to keep my feelings buried. I was 20, still grappling with the truth I'd spent years avoiding. San Francisco's pride flags and open hearts had shown me what freedom could look like, but here, in the middle of Yellowstone, that freedom felt like a dream I'd shattered. The group was divided. Some, like Lisa, stood by me, their support a quiet anchor, while others shot me looks that cut deeper than words. Sophie, who'd seen us by the geyser, wouldn't meet my eyes, her silence louder than any accusation. I sat on a log, staring at the river, my backpack at my feet. The group was packing up for the next leg of the trip, but I could barely move, my mind replaying Ethan's touch. The way his hands had held me, the warmth of his breath, the moment that had been more than a kiss, a connection that felt like it could rewrite my world. I wanted to run, to hide, to pretend it never happened, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Lisa found me, her expression soft but firm. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside me. Her voice was steady, a lifeline in the storm. "No," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I messed everything up, Lisa. Ethan could lose his job because of me." She shook her head, her hand on my arm. "You didn't make him do anything, Alex. He chose this too, and you're allowed to feel what you feel. Don't let their rules make you ashamed." Her words stung, echoing the courage I'd seen in friends back home. People who'd come out, who'd loved openly despite the world's judgment. I wanted that strength, but the fear was still there, clawing at me. "What if this ruins him?" I whispered. "What if it ruins us?" Before she could answer, a shadow moved toward us. Ethan, he was in a jacket, his duffel slung over his shoulder, his face tense, but his eyes locked on mine. "Alex," he said, his voice low, urgent. "Can we talk?" Lisa gave me a nod, squeezing my arm before slipping away. I stood, my hands trembling, and followed Ethan to the edge of the camp, where the river's hum drowned out the group's chatter. He set his bag down, turned to face me, his expression raw, unguarded. "They're sending me back," he said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. "But I'm not letting this end here." My chest tightened, his words hitting like a wave. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," I said, my voice breaking. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have." "Stop," he cut in, stepping closer, his hand reaching for mine. His fingers were warm, steady, grounding me in a way that made my breath catch. "I don't regret a second of it, Alex. Not the way you looked at me. Not the way we connected." His voice dropped, a soft edge to it, hinting at the moment by the geyser. The way our hands had tangled, our bodies pressed close, a warmth that went beyond words. "You made me feel alive again." I swallowed, my throat tight, his touch sending a shiver through me. "But you could lose everything," I said, my eyes burning. "Your job, your career, and you could lose yourself if you keep hiding," he said, his voice firm but gentle. His thumb brushed my knuckles, A small gesture that felt like a lifeline. I've been where you are, Alex. Scared, running from who I am. I don't want that for you. I looked at him, his face lit by the faint glow of the stars, his eyes holding mine with a certainty I envied. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He stepped closer, his hand still in mine, his voice low and urgent. Come with me. Tonight. There's a town nearby, a place we can go, just to figure this out. No rules, no group, just us. I know it's a risk, but I'm willing to take it. Are you? My heart stopped, then raised, his words pulling me apart. Leaving with him meant abandoning the trip, risking my place in the group, my reputation, maybe my future at college. But staying meant swallowing my feelings, locking them away like I had for years. I thought of San Francisco, of the couples I'd envied, their hands intertwined, their courage a beacon I'd never reached for. Could I do this? Could I choose him? Choose myself? I'm scared. I admitted, my voice trembling. His fingers tightened around mine, warm and sure. I know, he said, his voice soft, his eyes never leaving mine. But you're not alone. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. The group's voices drifted from the camp, a reminder of the world waiting to judge us. I looked at Ethan, his touch grounding me, his presence a spark I couldn't ignore. Slowly, hesitantly, I nodded, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. He led me to his car, parked at the edge of the camp, the engine a low hum in the quiet night. He opened the passenger door, his hand brushing mine as I hesitated, my backpack heavy on my shoulder. Through the open window, our fingers met, a fleeting touch that felt like a promise, his warmth steady against the chaos in my head. You ready? He asked, his voice a whisper, his eyes searching mine. I stood there, the gravel crunching under my sneakers, the camp behind me, the road ahead. My heart was a storm, torn between fear and freedom, between the safety of hiding and the risk of being seen. I took a step, my fingers still tangled with his, but the choice whether to get in the car or turn back hung in the air, unanswered as the stars burned bright above us.